or a libelous piece of gossip that starts going around about you? Do you hear it? Evaluate it? Ask God what good you can get out of it and then pass it on to Him and let Him have it? Just like you say you do with praise? Let me inform you of something. If your heart harbors criticism and makes you anxious and fretful, then it also harbors praise and makes you proud. And if you can't handle criticism, neither can you handle praise. Amen. And your carnal heart is deceiving you because it is desperately wicked above all things, and who can know it? And friend, you'd better start spending hours in prayer asking God to help you handle both praise and criticism. And when you can honestly read a negative letter or listen to a critical comment or a nasty remark or a slanderous report or a libelous piece of gossip that starts going around about you, and prayerfully ask God what you need to learn from that, and then give it completely to Him and get on with your life, it is then that God knows that He can trust you with greatness. Amen. And He can trust you with praise. Amen. And this was the test that He put upon David. And David passed it with flying colors. Amen. David seemed to have been a young man who was totally committed to the Lord. Look back there at verse 5. It says, and David went out whithersoever Saul sent him. David now works full time for Saul. We don't know for sure, but many feel that David was Saul's personal bodyguard. And verse 14 says that he behaved himself wisely in all his ways, and the Lord was with him. Amen. Then go down to verse 28. It says, and Saul saw and knew that the Lord was with David. Amen. And look at verse 30 where it says, David behaved himself more wisely. So when he says he was being looked at more closely, he says that David behaved himself even more wisely. So here's a young man after God's own heart, and here's a young man who is committed to the Lord, so he behaves himself wisely. Amen. He's not proud, he's not arrogant, and he gives the Lord all the glory. Amen. But the devil is really trying to trip him up. Satan knows that God has something big planned for this man, and he's trying to trip David up before he ever gets out of the starting gate. And so far, David has been tempted by the exaltation of women. Saul has slain his thousands. Oh, but David, he's slain his 10,000. Yay, David, go, David. Next, David's been tempted to react to Saul's ridiculous jealousy, because the momentum and popularity was with David. And don't think David wasn't tempted to give this guy what was coming to him and take his throne right then. He could have. All the popularity was with him. You know, jealousy is a terrible thing, because jealousy can cause people to imagine all kinds of things. Amen. Jealousy makes people suspicious. And suspicion causes people to have imagination. And people with vivid imaginations have a tendency to draw wrong conclusions. And people with wrong conclusions have a tendency to become very hostile and filled with animosity. And they want to fight. And all of this was true of King Saul. But poor David was totally innocent. Just trying to do everything the best he could. But Saul had this little seed of jealousy cooking in his heart. And he stirred it. And he let it stew for weeks and months. And now King Saul had cooked himself up a whole big kettle of hot, fresh hate. And poor David, all David has done is just do what the Lord told him to do. Amen. You know, jealousy is like a snake. And it will just coil itself around your heart and eventually just squeeze the life right out of you. And that's exactly what happened to King Saul. He let that serpent of jealousy just coil itself around his heart, and he squeezed and crushed all of the love he ever had in his heart for this wonderful young man, David, who had been willing to even lay down his life to protect King Saul. Do you forget that David had not done everything to deserve? He'd not done anything to deserve this treatment from Saul. David had done nothing but been loyal and faithful to King Saul. David had done nothing whatsoever to undermine or undercut the king in any way. But all of this hate, all of this had infected and festered in the heart of Saul. Why? Because Saul is now under the control of the devil. And he has been for some time. And the devil planted the seed, and Saul let it grow, and he watered it. But when you are in a demonic stupor, you can't reason right from wrong. And you can't make rational decisions. And even though this is the reason he lost his throne, he still can't get off this road to hell. And he just keeps plunging down, down, down. And he's on his way out. He's a lame duck. And the thoughts of being driven off of his throne just drives him out of his mind. But he can't see what it's for. His willful disobedience to God. All he can see is that David's sun is rising and outshining his sun, and that his sun is setting. And there's nothing he can do about it. You know, it's a terrible thing to let jealousy ever get into your heart. And you know one place that becomes evident? You know one place where your heart truly reveals itself to you? When someone else is blessed. Especially if someone else is blessed close to you monetarily. I don't know if you are aware of this, but they have done studies. And very few people, even professed Christians, can honestly admit that they are genuinely happy when they see someone else getting blessed. Or when someone else gets something that they don't get. Very few people can genuinely be happy in someone else's blessing.